Brilliant. Great. Well, hi everyone. Thanks for joining us. So, Non's kindly offered up some of her time to have a bit of a catch up with myself, and you guys have submitted some questions as well. So we'll kind of get stuck into those in a bit. But yeah, no. First of all, Non, thanks for joining us, and thanks for giving up your time. I guess just how are you? Like, what's been going on?
Yeah, no, thank you for getting in touch, and it's nice to sort of connect to everyone at home. But I'm over in Australia at the minute, so it's about 8 p.m. over here. I've been here for maybe the past 6 weeks, I guess. But yeah, can't complain. The weather is, on the whole, pretty good, and luckily we have a bit more freedom over here to what you guys have, really.
Cool. So, what's the main difference then? Like, what are you able to do out in Australia?
So we have unlimited exercise, so we can leave the house as much as we want. We're able to swim they have like these ocean pools. So basically sort of unstaffed 50-meter pools all along the ocean that are filled with the ocean water. And open water swimming, which is a bit more viable over here because obviously it's a bit warmer. Gyms are closed, bars are closed, but cafes and restaurants have just opened. Oh, nice. So you can go in with up to 10 people. We can meet in groups of 10 people for sort of social activities, going riding, and we're allowed to go over to each other's houses now. So yeah, the restrictions are really eased off in the last couple of weeks, which is nice. But obviously everyone's keeping a close eye now just to make sure it's safe and a successful transition, I guess.
Fair enough. Okay, well maybe we won't talk too much about that because we're a bit more restricted over in Wales, especially. So, but no, that's great that you're able to do a fair bit. So yeah, what kind of led you then to heading out to Australia earlier in the year?
There's a lot of factors, actually. One of the things we considered, obviously, is accessibility to training. We knew we wouldn't be able to swim at all in the UK, and there was still the option of swimming open water over here. But in the end, sort of training became sort of the secondary issue, really, with, when everything started getting really severe and, the lockdowns got a lot stricter. We realized that, training wasn't the priority anymore. And, being closer to Aaron's family as well, because we have to consider the issue that Aaron's Australian and I was British, and whichever place that we're in, we were having, to sort of compromise on that. And ultimately, Aaron's parents needed help with the family business, and we wanted to be closer just in case one of his parents got sick and couldn't actually keep the company working. So, yeah, Aaron actually had to, when we first got back, had to work some pretty early shifts with his dad, put in the hours. But, at the minute,
business?
Fruit and veg delivery. So he was sort of up at the crack of dawn at the markets, buying all the fruit and veg, and then sort of delivering it out. The business actually is booming because everyone wants home deliveries at the minute. So that's sort of been one very small silver lining to all of this for us on that front. But we're off the hook now. So we're just sort of able to go back to a bit more of a normal routine and focus on training more than having to work in the mornings.
Back to the glamorous life of an elite athlete as opposed to fruit and veg delivery, I guess.
I know, we know how to roll.
Brilliant. And then what was that like? So obviously when you got out to Australia, I saw you had to spend was it 2 weeks in a hotel room with Aaron, because you guys just recently got engaged as well, didn't you, I think? So how was that as a kind of tester?
Yeah, well, everyone said if you can survive 2 weeks quarantined in a single room together, then you can survive marriage. So it was definitely a good test. We got engaged in January, but I think 2 days later, he flew off to the first camp of the year over in Fuerteventura. So everyone was like, "Oh, how's engaged life?" And I was like, "I haven't got a clue." It was an interesting start, but we're definitely making up for it now with obviously all the changes that are happening. We actually only found out about the quarantine 24 hours before we were set to fly to Australia. Before that, it was kind of a home isolation situation, but apparently too many people were breaking the rules. Then they decided to bring in this government-run quarantine, and we nearly didn't go because the thought of spending 2 weeks in a single room was quite daunting. But we did it in the end, and it wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be, but I'm not in a rush to do it again. The lack of fresh air for 2 weeks was definitely interesting. Trying to dry like your bib shorts and what have you and stuff around the room, because we took a kicker out so that we were able to do some indoor cycling at least while we were in that room. But yeah, the aircon wasn't great and the windows didn't open at all, so I do pity the cleaner that had to go in afterwards and sort it out, defumigate.
I can't imagine there's too many other hotel guests who are quarantined are also trying to do a few hours of training every day at the same time.
Yeah, no, I think we were probably, well, the policemen that were showing us into the room were actually laughing at us as we were going in with our bike bags and home trainers. They were like, you guys are mad. But it was the best thing that we did because it gave us a reason to get out of bed every day, gave us a bit of structure and like killed a few hours every day. Like, Zwift was the absolute dream for those 2 weeks.
Yeah,
I think Aaron clocked 40 hours or something.
Swift's really taken off. So I don't know if you noticed, but you know, Luke, obviously our coach, senior coach, he's in the process of doing every single route on Zwift, and I think he's ridden every day for about the last 30 days in a row or something ridiculous like that. So he's due to finish on Sunday with the PRL full. So yeah, I think if anyone's listening, they want to join him for that, he'd be welcome. He'd welcome the company. So yeah, he's got himself in some shape, to be fair to him.
That's awesome. Well done, Luke. I can remember a few years back, possibly at the bottom dip of his fitness, we got him to run a 400 meters max on the track out in South Africa, and fair play to him, off absolutely zero training, he did a 69, I think, or 68.
People forget there's a decent athlete under that chassis. You know.
Yeah, we were well impressed. So I'm sure 30 days of consecutive cycling, he's going to come back to work a new man.
Yeah, he's been loving it. So Brill, I guess, yeah, with everything's been going on and all the races being pretty much cancelled for this year or postponed until quite late, kind of what are your sort of main goals at the minute with regards to your training or stuff that you're trying to do?
I guess for me, it's been slightly different anyway. Sorry. Because I'm coming back from knee surgery, it wasn't as though I had all these races lined up for the year and I was in race shape. I was in peak shape coming into sort of the coronavirus lockdown. So things haven't massively changed. I was hoping to be back racing end of May, start of June, and obviously that's not happening now. But it's just meant that I've been able to take a slightly more relaxed comeback with my knee rehab. So building the running up mostly a bit slower. So I was supposed to introduce sessions probably 2 or 3 weeks ago, but actually decided to just get some more consistent, steady volume in, and hopefully sort of do a mini session on Saturday now, like three or 4 weeks later. And yeah, just build up the cycling a bit slower. And now for me, I'm just sort of, my main goal is to get myself to a level of fitness where I'd be 6 weeks away, say, from getting myself into kind of a race shape. So, you know, hopefully a few more weeks of this kind of base fitness, and I'll kind of be at a place then when I can try and hold that kind of fitness until we have to try and start peaking for races. Whether or not that'll happen this year, I don't know. If it doesn't, that doesn't matter. You know, I'll still have got a year of training in, and I'll have probably a bit of a break, and then sort of start hopefully firing back up for the 2021 season. But if we do have some races, and there have been a few proposed by the ITU, then that'll be great. And, you know, I thought I was going to come in and miss half the season, and all of a sudden I'm worrying about peaking too soon. So it's a bit surreal.
Bit different, yeah. No, I think that's something we've spoken a lot to our senior athletes who are still in Cardiff about with the racing side of things. Like, there's nothing you can really do about it. So keep the focus on what you can do. Like you're saying, for you, it's kind of getting back from that injury side of things, and for a lot of athletes, actually, it's a chance to kind of work on something that they might not normally work on. I think that's really helped them just stay motivated and keep a kind of even keel on things.
Yeah, absolutely. It's definitely, you know, an opportunity. And I think you always have to see sort of challenges and situations that are difficult as opportunities to do other things. If you're injured, you have to see it as an opportunity to improve on your weaknesses, or maybe even an opportunity to spend more time with friends and family that you don't always get to see. So I think, although it's very difficult, obviously, and you just have to try and focus on what you can do and not worry about what you can't, because it's so completely out of our control and so much bigger than, our sport, that you just have to focus on what you can do. And like for me, it's mainly just getting my knees strong and ready to sort of both train and compete at a high intense level again.
Brilliant, yeah. And to be fair, so linked to that kind of injury rehab process, a few people have asked, like, what kind of tips or advice would you give to athletes who are maybe coming back from injury? Like, do you have a way you approach it, or what your kind of advice around that?
My biggest tip would be to focus on what you can do and don't worry about what you can't, because there's no point going on social media and looking at someone and saying, oh, they've just done that 3-hour ride and I can't do that. But that's just the way it is, and you just really have to focus on what you can do. And when I was coming back from this knee surgery, there was points where all I could do was sort of 10 little exercises a day in my living room, and that was all I was allowed to do. And for months, all I was allowed to do was ride at 20 watts, and then that got put up to 50 watts and 100 watts. And I just sort of had to try and embrace that. And that was my reality at the time and my challenge at the time. And I just had to throw myself into that and to focus on it. But I think also when you're coming back from injury, don't be too hard on yourself. It's easy to kind of guilt yourself into thinking, oh, I need to be doing more, I need to do more rehab, or I'm not, and get a bit down on yourself if you haven't actually got round to doing it, because let's be honest, rehab is really boring. Just sort of enjoy that time to do stuff outside of triathlon as well. Spend time with friends and family, or really focus on your studies or your job, or just doing fun stuff that you wouldn't normally get to do. And I think we're all, I guess, with this lockdown period, maybe a bit over trying to find new hobbies and stuff to do, but I guess just sort of appreciate what you do have, and just focus on that instead of what you can't do, really.
Oh, definitely. I think, like, even with the restrictions we have in place, like, I've found like new things or doing things differently that I wouldn't have done normally. And even like for me, like, I'd probably speak to some of my friends more now via Zoom or Skype or whatever it is than I did before. And actually having the time to do that is quite nice. And I think it's, like you say, it's easy to get caught up in the stuff you can't do. And really, you just got to think about what can you do and try and make the most of it. So no, that's really cool. I guess sort of linked to that as well, like, obviously, like any sort of high-end or high-performing athlete, like you've probably come through a number of different setbacks and kind of bumps in the road on your journey. Like, from all of that, like, is there any key lessons or any tips you'd give out to people about how to deal with setbacks?
I've dealt with setbacks in a range of ways, sometimes really constructively and other times really destructively. And it's hard to find what works best for you, and how you learn a lot about yourself, basically, and what motivates you, and ultimately I think the biggest lesson I've learned is to always try and be kind to yourself. I'm like naturally really hard on myself, my own biggest critic, and I think I've just had to learn over the years to relax, and sort of take the situation that I'm in for what it is, and to not stress about what I'm not actually doing at the time. And I think it's similar to dealing with being injured. It's just kind of always maintaining perspective on things, and always just focusing on what you can do, not being too hard on yourself, and looking for the positives. And like I said, that's really hard. Like, I've definitely not got that right all the time. For instance, I was really harsh on myself after the Olympics. I really let that fourth position get on top of me and get me down. And it took maybe 18 months to get over that. And when I look back now, I think that was such a waste of time of me kind of being really harsh on myself and being really down about it and getting myself into a really bad place over it. When in reality, you kind of just have to be like, well, it's done now, and yeah, it's rubbish and it's not what I was looking for. And felt like I worked harder than that to get that position. But also looking at the positives, like that experience was amazing and I learned so much from it. And I would never, I got to go to the Olympics and, seeing all the positives from it instead of focusing on I was 2 seconds off a medal. Just always trying to focus on the positives that have happened and accepting and learning from the negatives, I guess.
And do you feel that as you've got more experience as an athlete that you're better at doing that now, or is it still something that it just takes a bit of time to kind of get through and see the positives?
It's definitely a work in progress. I like to think I'm a lot better at it now, and I think as you get older and mature with everything in life, you gain a better perspective on things. But I still have to remind myself, like going into some races, that if I'm getting too worked up about it, just it is just triathlon, and I know that I'm going to go out there and give my absolute best. And if that on the day that's only 10th or 20th, then I can't have done anything differently, and not to worry about it. And equally, if I've had a bad race, coming off it and sort of thinking, okay, what did I do wrong? And being like, well, that's fine. Everyone makes mistakes, and just learning from that. And the positives are becoming a better athlete from those bad races.
Brilliant. So these are all sort of questions we've been going through here that have been sent in by everyone who's sort of listening in today. So there's a few questions here around sort of like how you stay motivated or what motivates you. So yeah, like how do you motivate yourself to kind of push hard, maybe when you're feeling tired or something like that, or how you stayed motivated at the moment whilst maybe there's not so many races happening?
Staying motivated at the minute, I actually just really enjoy training. Sometimes I much more prefer training than I do to racing. So, I don't have a problem with motivating myself to get out the door, because I just really enjoy doing it. But sort of motivating myself when I'm tired or I don't particularly want to go out because the weather's rubbish, or there's a fine line. I think it's identifying why you're tired or why you don't want to go out the door. Is it because you're just a bit lethargic and feeling a bit lazy, or is it because you genuinely have, overdone it and you need to sort of back off? So whenever I'm feeling like that, I have to kind of check in with myself and ask those questions. And often when I'm feeling really tired and I go out and do a session, I really surprise myself. So I often give myself a chance. So for example, on Wednesday I had hill reps, and I honestly felt rubbish. This is on the bike. For the first 2 or 3, I was like, there's no way I can do this. It was 6 by 4 minutes, so it wasn't a massive session, but with the aim of descending the session, so getting faster as you went through the reps. And after the first 2, I was like, I don't think I can go any faster than this or go any further. And I was like, well, give it another 1 or 2 and just see how you feel. If it's still not improving, then can it, because I was probably overly fatigued. But I actually ended up finishing the session by going much further, pushing far many watts by the last rep. And I think sometimes it's you just need to give yourself a chance to see if it is just sort of being a bit negative and a bit lazy. Just sort of reading it yourself, I guess.
I think as well, like not every session has to be the greatest session that you've ever done. I think sometimes we can get a bit caught up, can't we? And actually just grinding it out, getting it done, doing the really basic stuff is sort of as valuable as those heroic sessions when you feel great and do your all-time PBs and all that kind of thing. And I guess someone like yourself who trains so much, you're going to have a lot more of the former than you are the latter.
Yeah, definitely. And actually, my coach Joel Filiol has a really sort of good philosophy of saving the bullet. So he was like, you should never finish a training session absolutely canned, exhausted, on the red. He just like, no, you do not need to do that. He believes in saving those efforts for the race, and that if you just keep those, obviously you have to train hard, but if you keep those efforts just below that sort of tipping point, then that's how you're going to get fitter, and that's how you're going to gain the most consistency, because consistency is the most important thing, especially in an endurance sport like ours. So yeah, I definitely agree. Like, you can't be a hero in every session, and you get days where you feel brilliant, and those heroics happen because you're feeling lucky. But yeah, it definitely doesn't have to happen all the time. Nice. It rarely does for me.
So that's quite interesting saying about Joel and that group. So you've been training with those guys just about a year and a half, 2 years now. Is that right? So,
yeah, about 18 months, I guess. Yeah.
So how's that kind of different to training? So it's before you were based up in Leeds in the centre up there, like kind of, yeah, what's the kind of key differences or the key similarities that you found moving from a centre environment to a training group environment?
I guess the big differences are, obviously, I'm on the road all the time now. All the year is structured around training camps, and there's very little time where we're at home. So that presents challenges in itself, because you're basically living out of a suitcase, or you're in hotel rooms, which is lovely, but equally, it's not home. You haven't always got a sofa to sit on, and your kitchen consists of a microwave and a kettle, and all those kind of things. So that's sort of, obviously one of the big differences. I think I must have spent a couple of weeks, I say in total last year, about 4 to 6 weeks at home, which isn't really that much. And often it's just a case of popping home to pick up a new set of wheels or something like that before going off to another race. But equally, I absolutely loved that change of environment. I'd been in Leeds for 8 years, and just, Leeds is brilliant, and I've had some of my most successful years whilst at Leeds, and I learned so much. I went from being, definitely an also ran at World Series, pretty much lapped out World Series, to winning races. So I made such huge developments there, and I do miss it at times, but I just needed a change of scenery and a change of stimulus, and being around athletes from all over the world was really cool, sort of learning from them and learning how different athletes train. And also, I find when you're in a group like that, everyone has gone there with purpose. So everyone they go there with the intention of being the best athletes that they can possibly be. And I found that amazing, to be around people that have really invested in themselves. You've made that decision to go there. It's not, I'm not saying that that's lacking within the British centres, but it's a natural progression. You kind of just end up at a centre when you're a British athlete. But everyone that's gone to Joel has made a concerted effort to go there and invest in themselves and in their sport, and that's really cool, and it makes for a really good environment.
Oh, it's definitely a pretty loaded group when it comes to sort of the quality of the athlete in there. Is pretty amazing. Like, yeah, like how do you find, like you kind of touched on it there, but like how do you find sort of training with such high quality athletes all the time?
Yeah, it's really good, but it's also not just from the sort of point of view of seeing how amazing these athletes are, and some of them on a day-to-day basis, but just kind of seeing how normal they all are. And they don't have glittering days every day. I've seen them get out of the pool early because they're tired. They're normal humans, doing normal things, and that's really cool as well, just to sort of realize that if you work hard and do things right, that you can achieve your potential as well. And it's amazing really how Joel has managed the environment. So you potentially have all these really good strong athletes training together. It's kind of a recipe for racing, and every session being really intense, but he manages to control that, and everyone works together to get the best out of themselves and to get the best out of the session, rather than kind of racing and competing with each other all the time. So it's really quite special, actually.
Brilliant. Actually, I think we've got a few coaches on the call today, and one of the questions we've got is what sort of advice would you give to a coach who's maybe working with younger athletes who are looking to try and pursue that more performance-focused part of the sport? Like, from your experience being an athlete and being around good coaches, are there any tips and advice that you'd pass on?
I think the biggest thing is sort of, if the coach keeps their feet on the ground, that really helps keep the athlete grounded. I've been really fortunate to be around coaches that have never got overly excited by what I'm doing and the performances that I'm producing or what I'm doing in training. Of course, they've enjoyed that with me. But I think if you get especially with junior athletes, if you get too excited and sort of blow too much hot air up their backsides when they're younger, it's actually not helpful at all. I think you really need to keep them grounded and focusing on the process and the journey, and not the outcome, not always praising them because they've had a good race or a good performance or a good session, actually praising them because they've executed more of a process goal better. They had a really good transition, or they were really focused on the swim and made good decisions in the swim. That kind of thing, I think, would be my biggest advice. You just don't want to get too carried away too soon, and sort of instilling good patience in them, because what you do as a junior is important, but if they actually do want to go on and become senior athletes, then it's actually more important that you're focusing on their long-term development and focusing on the tools that'll get them through to being good senior athletes.
Yeah, definitely. That's something we really try and pass on to the athletes in the academy and stuff, about that longer term view. And yeah, it's not just about being really good now, it's working on the stuff that's going to help you longer term. So when you were sort of coming through those youth and junior ranks, like, can you almost pinpoint a time where you kind of maybe change your mindset from someone who did lots of sport or did triathlon and athletics to someone who was like, no, I want to be a performance athlete?
So I didn't do triathlon as a junior or youth. I was actually only running then. And I think as a runner, my biggest sort of switch in mindset came when I was about 15, 16. And I was really fortunate to be taken on by Kelly Holmes onto her On Camp with Kelly initiative, which was basically mentoring young British female middle distance athletes. And I think having someone of that caliber identify me as a potentially talented athlete for the future really kind of gave me the belief that I could be a good athlete. And also the stuff that she taught us and showed us about being a full-time elite athlete really inspired me. And I thought, wow, it's amazing. I'd love to have this lifestyle and, sort of have a crack at doing this as a profession. But with triathlon, it probably didn't come until, so I was a student at University of Birmingham until 2010. And then in 2000, I worked for a year after that. And then in 2011, I went up to Leeds, and I took that massive shift from being a student, basically, to being a professional athlete. And I think that was being surrounded by, at the time, mainly in Leeds, it was Alistair and Johnny who were the main athletes there. There wasn't that many other sort of athletes performing at that level. And just seeing what they did day in, day out really sort of shifted my mentality and what I needed to do to be the best triathlete that I could be.
Brilliant, fantastic. Okay, so I've got a couple more questions here, but if anyone who's listening does have anything else they'd like to ask, just chuck it in the group chat, and we can kind of wrap it up just after this. So I guess the next two really are around nutrition. So there's one here that I can kind of sympathise with, which is essentially kind of how do you kind of maintain your good habits around nutrition? So for a lot of us, we're kind of locked at home, and I'm finding I'm going to the fridge a lot more often than I normally would. So like, yeah, what's your kind of top tips around kind of being good with your nutrition and staying on track and eating the things that you need to eat?
Okay, so I struggle with this as well. I definitely like a grazer and like to snack on stuff. My biggest tip would probably be just like, don't buy it, which I would love to do, but then my partner Aaron is like a complete chocoholic, loves chocolate, sweets, biscuits. every morning he gets up and has a coffee and 2 penguins, or Tim Tams over here
Tim
in
Tam,
Australia.
yeah, it's got to be Tim Tam, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah. So there's always like stuff in the house that I don't really want tempting me, but it is there. So I don't deny myself, because I find that's worse. If I deny myself, then I'll get to a cracking point and then just like go and eat all the chocolate in the fridge. But yeah, I kind of try my best to ration myself a little bit and like say, okay, I'll have this much tonight, and that kind of thing. But yeah, I'm not always the best with it, but try and fill up on healthy foods first, and then if you still have a bit of a sweet craving, then give yourself a little bit's fine.
Fair enough. I think maybe sometimes you got to cut ourselves a little bit of slack. Like you say, it's come back to being consistent, isn't it? If you're consistently good, the occasional Tim Tam or penguin's not going to be too dramatic. And then with regards to your sort of approach to nutrition, like, do you have a particular plan? Do you have an approach to how you go about like with your fueling and nutrition, or is it just a case of eat until you're full and then see how you go?
Yeah, I don't have anything strict. The only sort of dietary restrictions that I have is that I'm allergic to nuts, so I can't eat nuts, and I try not to have dairy and caffeine because I find it really irritates my asthma. So those are the only things that I really try and cut out, or keep to a minimum. Otherwise, just try and have a pretty healthy, balanced diet, and eat lots of fruit and veg, but no real plan. I don't weigh anything out, I don't measure, I don't count calories. Like you said, eat till I'm full, and just try and, when I do snack, try and be conscious of them snacking on healthy things. But I think just don't obsess over it. I think people get too obsessed about it, and there is no secret. Just sort of eating what you feel like and allowing yourself to have what you feel like a lot of the time, because your body will tell you what you need a lot of the time.
Definitely. Okay, cool. So yeah, guys, if you do have any more questions, do chuck them in the chat now. I guess, yeah, so one from me. What's your, I say from me, it's from, I think it might be from Reese actually. What's your kind of favourite training session? My
favourite training session would be a 60-minute build run. So we often do this with Joel. It'll be, say, an hour 40 run in total. So we'll do a warm-up, 30-minute warm-up, do a couple of strides, and then an hour build, which will be, for us girls, it'll be 20 minutes at around 350 per K pace, straight, like no recoveries, this is straight through, then 20 minutes at 340-ish pace, and then 20 minutes around 330-ish, 330-ish pace. So it's quite controlled, nothing crazy, but I just love those sessions. Just sort of, that's my bread and butter. I thrive off that kind of threshold paced stuff. So that's my favorite. And I love running as well. So
there you go. It's got all the good things. Okay, I can't see any more questions in the group chat, but I guess one thing I've got to ask, 2022 Commonwealth Games, is that on the horizon for you?
Absolutely, yeah. I'm excited about it already. Yeah, no, I would love to go to Birmingham. It's where I started triathlon for a start, so it kind of be like a full circle kind of experience for me to go back there and race the Commonwealth Games. And I had such a positive experience, although I didn't get the result I wanted in the individual race on the Gold Coast. It was such an amazing experience to be part of Team Wales and to work with all you guys and sort of connect a lot more to Welsh triathlon, because obviously I was up in Leeds a lot and didn't get to see you all down in Cardiff very much. So it's such a positive experience, and I'd love to be part of the team again. So at the minute I haven't planned much past 2022, but yeah, I plan to get there.
Brilliant. Right. Well, I'll keep on the bike training then, so I can lend more of a hand than I did last time round. We've got a couple.
You were training partner on the Gold Coast, so hopefully you'll be back for a bit more of that.
Fingers crossed. So we've got a couple of questions that have jumped up into the group chat. Just a quick one. So do you do much stretching in the day? If so, what what does that look like?
Sorry, repeat again. Yeah, I lost you for a second then.
Do you do a lot of stretching during the day?
I've actually got a lot better at this because obviously limited access to physios and massage. So kind of had to be managing it myself. And I also find that my knee is a lot better if I do a lot of quad stretching and ITB rolling. So at the minute, I'm probably doing 10, 15 minutes a day, which is a lot more than I ever used to do. So it's not loads, but it's definitely helping. And I think while people haven't got access to sort of hands-on manual therapy, I think it's probably a really good idea to try and incorporate a little bit of it in.
Yeah, definitely good advice to that. And then, do you have any sort of thoughts, or do you use any sort of training apps like Strava or Training Peaks and that kind of thing?
Yeah, use Training Peaks. So Joe will upload all our training onto Training Peaks generally a week. So at the start of the week, he'll put up that week, and then upload everything straight from my Garmin to there, so that I'm not very good at analysing the data, to be honest with you, but he can have a look at it. Use Strava just for the fun of it. I like looking at where we've ridden and sort of some of the segments. And then Zwift as well, I guess, a little bit. So
Real. And then one from Derry here. So on aerobic rides, some athletes might try and smash every hill. Like, how do you sort of approach your aerobic riding? Like, you try and keep it consistent? You quite controlled with it?
Yeah, very controlled. One of my pet peeves is when you go out like in a group and there's always someone like trying to push the pace. That really is annoying. So consistent aerobic riding is to be done. You know, it's easy, steady riding. And I get if you don't get to ride very much in the week, you might want to work a bit harder on some of the sections. But I'm riding around 450k a week, so it's nice to sort of just take those quite relaxed and focus on working that kind of aerobic energy system.
And how do you measure your aerobic efforts? Do you do it on feeling, or do you have like power data or anything like that to guide it?
I generally work off feeling. I do have a Garmin on, which is recording stuff, but I'm not very good at looking at it and sort of analysing it. I actually never used any form of sort of data tracking or whatever until after 2016 Olympics, when I started coming over to Australia a little bit more to spend time with Aaron, and the coaches at home just wanted to make sure I wasn't overdoing anything. So up until 2016, I never had a Garmin watch or a Garmin device on my bike. Other devices are available. So yeah, I generally go off feeling, and I have the data there for my coaches basically to look at.
Brilliant. Okay, I know you've got another slightly less important interview with BBC, I think, off the back of this one. So we'll wrap up with one final question. This is actually from Laura, who's part of our development academy. She just likes to know, like, what made you choose triathlon over athletics?
The big lure of triathlon at the time when I was kind of switching was initially the new challenge. And when I started to get into it, I just loved the diversity of the training. So the fact that there was 3 sports, and ultimately now what I love is the community. I think it's a fantastic community, and you don't get that in many other elite sports. It's so easy to connect with athletes who are right at the beginning, sort of grassroots levels, right the way through up to elites. And hopefully, I think the age group community feels like they connect quite well with the elite community, and also within the elite community, the friendships and the camaraderie is really, really nice, and it is how it's shown on social media. The British girls and some of the girls outside of the British team are some of my best friends, and I think that's quite special, and I think quite unique to triathlon as well.
Oh, definitely, I agree. I always feel really fortunate to work in triathlon. Same reason, just the athletes and stuff are brilliant to work with, but also the coaches, the support staff, just the general sort of culture of the sport is really, really good. So easy choice, Laura. Triathlon all the way. Brilliant. Right. Well, thanks so much for your time today, Non, and thanks everyone for listening in. I think Verity is going to send out a bit of a feedback survey off the back of this. So obviously it's the first time we've done something like this. So yeah, if you guys can give us a feedback, we'd really appreciate that. And if it's something that we want to pursue a bit more of, then have to try and line up some other guests, and I'll polish up on the interview skills. But no, yeah, brilliant. Thanks for your time, Non, and enjoy the rest of your day, and yeah, enjoy your training out in Australia.
You too. Take care, everybody, and thanks for tuning in.
Cheers. Bye.